Why don't you tell us now, Miss Pavlova? Tell us exactly what happened last night.
It was a little after 1 in the morning. It was so late, but I hadn't had time to feed Darker, so I gave her some food. And then, all of a sudden, she scratched me and jumped out of my hands.
People do say that cats become very anxious and nervous in new environments.
She was so fast she disappeared through the ventilator before I could stop her.
And that is how you acquired the rather nasty wound on the back of your hand, I take it?
And I had read the rules on the wall. I knew that I was not allowed Darker with me.
Yes, modern science suggests that animals can carry infectious diseases. It's a precaution, really.
So I listened and listened, trying to hear if there was some noise in the next cabin. It was very quiet. I was sure if someone was there, he must be sleeping.
So at that point you thought it's safe to try to lure the kitten back again? By dangling the end of the toy through the ventilator and into the adjoining cabin?
Darka always loved this toy, but it didn't work. Nothing worked. I tried using her favorite toy. I tried whistling to her softly, but nothing. She didn't return.
So the faint whistling sound Kazuma wrote about in his diary was Miss Pavlova trying to retrieve her pet. Cats have a propensity to remain hidden in the shadows when frightened.
Yes, so there was nothing else I could do. I just had to wait until she had calmed down. But then... I nearly passed out with shock. I heard her cry out and then... It was such a dreadful bang. Then afterwards, nothing. It was totally silent.
Kazuma was... From the appearance of the brown mark on the floor, it seems like that what you heard was the victim stepping on the glass bell and tripping up. Thus this Buria is a large vessel, but even she can pitch and roll violently without warning. If Mr. Asogi was already off balance as a result of the ship lurching when the kitten got under his feet, the combination of unfortunate factors could easily have caused him to fall over. But what became of the kitten afterwards?
In the end, I managed to get her to come back through the ventilator.
Yet Darker is nowhere to be seen.
I must have forgotten to lock my case, and now she's disappeared again.
Precious, that cat is as insufferably restless as I am. Well, he knows something about himself at least.
When I woke this morning, I heard that a young man in the cabin next to mine had died, but I couldn't bring myself to tell anyone what had happened. I was too scared that they would send me back.
Hold on a minute. What about the snake? You're right. Where is it? If the snake isn't your friend, Miss Pavlova, then whose is it and where did it come from? What on earth is such a dangerous creature doing on board the ship? Oh, I didn't say. Snake is my friend. His name is Pirosko. What? That snake belongs to you? He escaped from cage when emergency alarm sounded. I was looking for him. I did not expect to find him in here. Yes, how did that snake get into this cabin? But animals are not permitted on board. We are at sea for 1 year. You want to be so long without close friend? Without someone who understands? Couldn't you find someone a little more human who understands you better? But my dear bully fellow, our gargantuan venomous snake, surely you can appreciate the danger you're putting everyone in? No venom. Pirosko does not have venom. He is harmless, very long, but very gentle. He is adorable like Granny. It's venomless? Yes, now he is hungry, so he is in bad mood. But once I feed him, you will see big smile. And you feed him what? Milk, I suppose? Like they say, they milk chickens? Ridiculous. Snakes that drink milk are only in stupid stories. Eats mouses. Big fat round mouses. Oh, so is that what the mousetrap in the passageway out there is for? Of course. How else can I catch my friend's favorite food? Nothing says top of the food chain like the look in their eyes right now. I refuse to drink milk. It can't hear a whistle, it can't climb. It refuses to drink milk, it can't hear a whistle, it can't climb a bell cord, and it's not even venomous. How did something so inept land a starring role? It's not my fault. I do not make up stories. My Pirosco is nothing to do with this incident. So that's what happened. That's the truth behind my best friend's tragic death. Erklärt immer noch nicht, wie Garderobe da steht in Russisch. Das Detail fehlt auch noch.
Miss Pavlova, I understand the difficult situation you found yourself in, and I do sympathize, but please remember this. A young man lost his life. If you're going to attempt to cover up your guilt with lies, then no matter what the circumstances, I cannot forgive you.
What are you talking about, Miss Mikotoba? What lies? Miss Pavlova just confessed everything. It was just a series of unfortunate events, an accident.
I am no great detective like Mr. Sholmes. I don't have a gift for knowing the truth. But even I can see that was not the truth. Don't you agree, Mr. Naruhodo?
To be perfectly honest, yes. There's a discrepancy in Miss Pavlova's story, I'm sure of it. I just can't quite put my finger on it. I confess, I wasn't intending to let Scotland Yard deal with any outstanding issues on this matter. I am only present here for a very specific reason. The truth is you, Mr. Naruhodo, are simply a distraction. A distraction? I do hope you've not been finding your shackles too uncomfortable. Not again. When did he do that? Especially as they are on your wrists as a result of my intervention. I was rather hoping I could resolve matters before we made our next port call. You were, Mr. Sholmes? Yes, but I overlooked one important detail. The deceased young man was a very close companion of yours, was he not? Yes. Kazuma was my closest friend. I owed him my freedom, even. In that case, we must follow this to its conclusion. No further distractions. You must uncover the real truth here, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes, whatever that may be. The key to this is the discrepancy in Miss Pavlova's story, I'm sure. If I can chase that down, maybe the truth will become clear. The truth about how you really died. About how that scene in your cabin really came to be. Alright, I will see what I can do. Excellent.
Thank you, Mr. Naruhodo.
So then, shall we begin? Yes. What we should ponder first is the victim who lost his life in a cabin that was bolted shut from the inside. Was this truly an unfortunate accident, or was it in fact no accident at all? That is what we must establish in the first instance. But we've already established it, haven't we? The man tripped over the kitten that had climbed into his cabin via the ventilator. Tragic, yes, but still an accident. Wait, let's just take a step back. It doesn't make sense if that's really what happened, does it? I'm going to have to ask you to spell it out for me, I'm afraid. Yes, it's starting to take shape now. There's a clear contradiction between the facts and Ms. Pavlova's story here. The evidence is right there in Kazuma's cabin. It's undeniable. His death couldn't possibly have been a mere accident. Really? Let us show our hand, Mr. Naruhodo. Time to present the evidence. The evidence that proves unequivocally that the victim's death was no mere accident. The truth is clearly recorded in this photographic print. There's no way that Mr. Ryunosuke could have left this message on the floor. That script, it's Russian, isn't it? Indeed it is. The word written means wardrobe. I see what you mean. Most people would leave a dying message in their native language, Japanese in this case. But maybe he was studying Russian. It is a simple language. He could have picked it up very fast. Russisch ist keine einfache Sprache. That doesn't seem likely. That's actually not the point. It makes no difference whether he knew Russian or not. Sorry, what do you mean? Exactly what I said before. There is no way Mr. Ryunosuke could have left this message on the floor, and the reason why is clearly explained in here. Damage to the Genickbruch, resulting in an instant death. Which means after the victim fell to the floor, he couldn't possibly have written anything, because he was already dead. That's not the only reason either. There's something else we found in Mr. Ryunosuke's cabin. A remnant of something that couldn't possibly have been there if what Ms. Pavlova told us was true. What? So Susato-san has noticed it too then. Putting this message on the floor aside, there's something else that gives the truth away. Another piece of evidence that proved this was no accident. That was no accident. In other words... This piece of broken glass next to the mark on the floor. But that's the glass bell the kitten had around its neck. We already know all about it. It was broken in half when the victim tripped over the cat and fell. So we already have a satisfactory explanation. Where's the flaw in that logic? Unfortunately, there's a very big flaw, a fatal flaw. If that's really what happened, then how did one half of the bell end up back here in this cabin? Yes, remember that we found the other half of the glass bell in that wastepaper basket. Would you care to explain that, Ms. Pavlova? Both these pieces of evidence clearly point to the same conclusion. That when Mr. Ryunosuke died last night in his cabin, there was someone else in the room. And that same person deliberately arranged the scene to disguise the truth, in order to cover up his or her own guilt. Yes, there was someone else present in Mr. Ryunosuke's... You are wasting time. Someone else was there? Da, of course. We know this. What are you talking about? Bulkhead was bolted shut from inside. There was no way in or out. Oh, yes. And the only other person in cabin when young student died was you. It's true, I was in the cabin when it happened. You were shut inside the cabin wardrobe, to be precise about the details. But I don't know Russian. There's no way I would have left that message. Not would have. There's no way you could have left that message, to be precise about the details. Would you mind? Forgive me, my dear fellow. As I was saying, the person in question wrote the word wardrobe in Russian on the floor, in an attempt to incriminate me for the crime, even though I had been asleep in there the entire time. And then the same person picked up the broken glass bell that had fallen to the floor, for fear of it becoming evidence that would show how Mr. Isogi really died. But why wouldn't this person have taken all the pieces of the bell away? Leaving half behind was always going to raise questions. Yes, well, it was past 1 o'clock in the early hours of the morning. The cabin would have been quite dark. The single small lamps suspended from the ceiling would barely have cast any light onto the floor there. Little wonder then that the culprit failed to notice a fragment of the tiny item. You all suspect me, don't you? Seaman Stroganoff. Nina is a woman of sea. She is daughter of strong sailor. 2 years ago they noticed her dancing skills and she went away to join ballet company. But before she was dancer on this ship, a member of ship's band. You do not accuse ship's angel of being criminal. Ah, so that's it. You say that when young student died, Nina was there in his cabin. But that is not possible. I give my tooth. Well, this is all most interesting. And why would you give your tooth, pray? How can you be so sure? You are a great detective, you should know. Look, truth in eyes, cabin bulkhead was bolted shut from inside. Nobody could go into cabin, not Nina, not anyone. Or you want to tell me that killer can walk through locked doors? Niet, it's impossible. He's right. But wait, I've read about this in detective stories. People often tie thread around door latches so they can open and close them from the outside. Fred, are you stupid? These bulkheads are not barn doors. Certainly not. These are watertight doors as one would expect to find on any modern steamship. Constructed of heavy steel with not a gap inside. No threads or needles or magnets could have been used. No, of course not. I thought so too, but Mr. Naruhodo suggested it earlier, so... Tusato-san, how could you shift it onto me like that? So Seaman Stroganoff has a valid point. The cabin door couldn't have been bolted shut from the outside. Not necessarily. What? I put it to you that I could bolt this cabin door without laying a finger on it. And in this very cabin, we can see the traces of the method I have in mind having been used before. I don't believe it. Well, Mr. Naruhodo, I believe you know what I mean, don't you? A way to shut the bolt of the cabin door from the outside? One way does spring to mind, yes. Do you really know what Mr. Shums means, Mr. Naruhodo? Yes, and so should you, because we have seen it happen. Indeed, we have. So, would you care to do the honors, Mr. Naruhodo? Point out the telling signs of the method that was used to slide the cabin door bolt across from the outside. Look at the bookcase there. See how all the books and the things on it have toppled over. That must have happened when the ship made its emergency stop before. Yes, that's right. It's a very powerful vessel after all. When the engines are thrown into reverse, a violent jolt goes across the entire ship. Any small objects that aren't fastened down are bound to fall over. I believe, yes, it's what's known as the force of inertia acting on the objects. Is there nothing Susato-san doesn't know, or that isn't in her book at least? Well, whatever it's called, the same force that pushed over those books on the bookcase also made something else in this cabin move. The bolt on the cabin door. It was very obvious just after the emergency stop that the ship made earlier. We had come into this cabin not long before and we hadn't bolted the door. But then...
Oh yes! That's it! When the ship stopped suddenly, the bolt flew across and locked the door.
Yes, it's made of metal, but it's small and light enough to be moved by the ship's sudden change of speed. Or the force of inertia, if you want to call it that. Are you trying to say that last night after Mr. Asoge was killed... This is Buria made another emergency stop? When I woke up this morning and looked around the cabin, I thought it looked a little odd. All the books on the shelves had toppled over, and all the ornaments. It was almost as if someone had run their hand across the shelves and deliberately knocked everything over.
Oh yes, I remember that. And I stood them all up again, didn't I?
Then, when we came into this cabin, we were surprised to see the same thing in here. All the books and everything had toppled over, just like in Mr. Asoge's cabin. Do you have anything to say about this, Miss Pavlova? Are you out of your mind? You say Buria made emergency stop? It does seem a little far-fetched. How could it possibly have happened? Unless you're saying that the culprit is actually someone from the engine room. Oh, it is simple enough. Are you forgetting the button in the passageway outside, used to trigger the emergency alarm?
Ah, yes, of course. There was a notice, wasn't there, telling you only to press the button in time of emergency.
On dark nights, when the fog is dense, the captain cannot afford to rely on the eyes of his lookout alone. Hence, the placement of a number of buttons around the vessel to allow any crewman to raise the alarm. The sort of button one is almost compelled to press to satisfy one's curiosity. Wait, it was you? When the button is pressed, two things happen in the interest of safety. The emergency alarm bell rings and the vessel comes to complete stop. As indeed it did a little earlier today.
Mr. Sholmes, surely it wasn't you who...
As I always say, a button has but one purpose in life. To be pressed, whatever the occasion. He sounds almost proud of himself. How dare you mess with ship? I report you to captain. You are in much trouble now. Now, I'm sure all that can wait until later. Let us not overlook the fact that we have now learned a valuable lesson. When the vessel makes an emergency stop, the bolts on the cabin doors slide closed. So, what we must now consider...
Yes, it all comes down to one thing now. Last night, after what happened to Mr. Asoge, did the ship make an emergency stop or did it not?
You are idiots. Buria's huge ship with many passengers. If we make emergency stop even in middle of night, there would be chaos everywhere. What are your thoughts, Mr. Naruhodo? Well, it's certainly possible that some kind of emergency happened last night. We have evidence to support that idea.
Really? What evidence, Mr. Naruhodo?
Fascinating. Do show us, my good man. What evidence promotes the theory that some emergency gripped this vessel last night? Das ist der Schiffslog. Seaman Stroganoff, it's your duty to patrol the first-class area of the ship, isn't that right? That is correct. Why? And the ship's log here, this would be where you record the details of your duties. What are you doing with that? That is mine. Ah, you rather carelessly left it atop the little makeshift burrow in the passageway out there. But as responsible passengers, we took it into our care with a mind to return it to you later. I left it there on purpose, that is where I put it always. The point is, looking at what you usually record, it's clear that under normal circumstances you write the phrase "nothing to report" every 30 minutes. But from 2 o'clock last night until first light this morning, nothing was recorded at all. That is, because nothing happened. But if nothing happened, you would normally write "nothing to report", wouldn't you? Indeed so, which tells us that shortly after 2 AM, something happened here aboard the SS Buria. Something sufficiently significant to make you forget to fill in the ship's log, in fact. Are you suggesting that the ship really did make an emergency stop in the middle of the night? Stop talking rubbish! If I'm perfectly honest, I find that a little hard to believe myself. Why? Well, because if something as major as an emergency stop really had happened, surely all of us would have noticed. That's very true. Thanks to the emergency stop we experienced earlier, we all know what it feels like now. The ship lurched so violently and the alarm bell was so loud. I can't imagine that anybody would sleep through that even if it happened in the dead of night. Well, no, that's a good point. What of the throbbing? Sorry, what do you mean? Your head, man. The throbbing of your head since this morning. We have all suffered with it. Oh, yes, I have had a headache, you're right. In fact, I haven't been feeling myself since I woke up today. Nor have I. My head has been feeling heavy ever since dawn. Yes, you've all been afflicted, haven't you? Just as I suspected. He's right, my head's been throbbing today too. And since eating dinner yesterday evening, everything has felt sort of hazy. I can't really remember anything that happened after I climbed back inside the wardrobe. Then the first thing I noticed this morning was the throbbing pain in my head. I had already been dragged out of the wardrobe and had those handcuffs put on me. By that point, why didn't I wake up when all that was happening to me? Tell me, Mr. Naruhodo, you boarded this vessel as a stowaway, didn't you? Well, yes, sorry. The stowaway class of accommodation doesn't usually include meals. What did you survive on? Well, Kazuma looked after me. He was always happy to share his meals. So you enjoyed some of the whole roast chicken dish that was served yesterday evening, I take it? Yes, in fact, I had all of that. Kazuma wasn't fond of chicken. Oh, really? So the victim didn't eat any of the chicken at all? That's right, he didn't touch it. Is that relevant? My dear fellow, does that not strike you? Mr. Sholmes, do you mean to say that there was something wrong with the chicken? I do. No, really? Is that really true? The meal prepared for the passengers last night had been tampered with by the addition of a soporific designed to induce a very deep slumber in those who consumed it. A sleeping drug? Do you mean whoever did this laced every meal with a sleeping drug so no one would notice the ship's emergency stop? Mr. Naruhodo, of course that's not what Mr. Sholmes mean. What a far-fetched idea. Precisely. Lacing every meal of every passenger on board with a soporific drug would certainly be impossible. Unless, that is, every single member of the crew was a conspirator. Mr. Sholmes. Well, seaman. I'm sorry to say that any more deception in this matter will get you nowhere. If you refuse to talk, there would have to be an inquiry made through the shipping company, of course. And were that to happen, every member of the crew and the captain himself would be hauled over the coals. For aiding and abetting a renegade. Please, no more. I will tell everything. I cannot make problems like this for everyone anymore. These crewmen are your former comrades, I believe? Yes, so when I decided to run away, I asked them to help me. We all agreed to help, everyone together. She threw away everything, her fame in the ballet, Mother Russia. We wanted to help our angel. I don't believe it. But you're right, we put sleeping drug in chicken last night. Ich müsste langsam, glaube ich, mal was trinken. Mein Hals ausgetrocknet ist hier. Yes, I remember now. I did notice chewing on a lump of something strange and bitter at one point. Duh, we could not make all drug. How do you say dissolve? Talk about heavy seasoning. At midnight in waters near Shanghai, we brought our angel on board. She was helped by comrade on shore with small fishing boat. While all the passengers of the SS Boreas slept soundly. Thanks to the almost magical effects of the slumber-inducing potion their evening meals had contained. So if that's what happened, the only people awake on the ship last night were the crew, people who disliked chicken, and the newly boarded passenger, Miss Pavlova. And that means it would have been possible for you. You could have used the emergency stop trick to lock Kazuma's cabin door. But how does that make sense? Surely every cabin door would have ended up locked in that case, and there would have been complete chaos. Oh, I wouldn't say though. Of course, just like us, all the other passengers would have eaten their evening meal of chicken in their cabins, after which they would have been overwhelmed by tiredness because of the sleeping drugs. Quite, and accordingly, all passengers were already in their cabins for the night. The overwhelming majority of passengers would habitually sleep with their cabin doors bolted anyway, and so not one of them would have found it remarkable to find the door locked in the morning. In summary, in order to fasten the bolt of a single cabin door on the ship, the culprit brought the entire vessel to an emergency stop in the early hours of the morning. You have talked long time and said many things. What is point? The point is what I said earlier. There was somebody else present on the scene when the victim lost his life last night. Someone who left a message in Russian on the floor in an attempt to incriminate another. Someone who tried desperately to hide the broken fragments of glass that would reveal the culprit's identity. And someone who abused the ship's emergency stop procedure in order to lock a door. All told, a busy night. But... I don't know about any of this. I'm just a little girl. You like to speak with your long English words and explain your clever ideas. But I am sailor, and sailors don't listen to long boring stories. We don't believe. Sailors like me, we trust only what we see with our eyes. A laudable trait. I am quite of the same disposition, my good man. Observation to me is everything. Mr. Naruhodo? Yes. Do you hear it? That accusatory cry of guilt on the wind? What accusatory cry of guilt? Sorry, you've lost me. Proof of involvement, man. But you can't hear such a call with your ears. No, you must hear it with your eyes, for observation is the basis of all deduction. What are you talking about? I believe the time has come for one final logic and reasoning spectacular to expose the truth. So, Mr. Naruhodo, your assistance, if you please. With what exactly, Mr. Holmes? With observation, my dear fellow, just as I said. Observation?
If you remember, Mr. Naruhodo, we know that somebody tried to fabricate evidence, don't we? By tampering with the scene of Mr. Asogi's death. What we're looking for is some trace of evidence that one of these two was there when it happened.
Precisely, you're delightfully quick to grasp my meaning. Alright, I will see what I can see. So we're looking for a trace of evidence that shows someone else was there last night when Kazuma died? Oh, look at this. It's some kind of stain. In an unusual place.
Yes, you're right. It looks like ink, if I'm not mistaken.
Ink. And look at the color too. It's clear where this came from. Seaman Stroganoff, you seem to have quite a large purple stain on the back of your white uniform there. Oh yes, I don't know where the dirt comes from. So nothing in particular comes to mind about the stain? What are you trying to say? It would appear that the significance of this stain has escaped your attention, Seaman. Allow us to make it plain. It's a very large purple stain on the back of Seaman Stroganoff's uniform, and I think what made it is clear. Indeed it is, so Mr. Naruhodo, present the evidence that proves it. My pleasure. Alright then, the evidence that proves what that stain on the back of Seaman Stroganoff's uniform really is, müsste das Foto sein. Yes, it's this photograph and the ink it shows. That's what caused the stain on your uniform. Ink. A rather unusual color of ink, purple. Ah, the penny drops, at last. Now you see the significance. The Russian word on the floor next to the victim's body was written in purple ink. And the stain on the back of your uniform is ink of exactly the same color. If the ink had been dry, it couldn't possibly have stained your uniform in that way. Which means you must have been present in the cabin in the moments immediately after the ink was split. Spilled, glaube ich, stand da. Alright, yes. It was me, I did it, everything. I arranged everything in that student's cabin to make it look like Wardrobe Man did it. Then I pressed button to make Boria do emergency stop and bolt cabin door shut. I did everything so no one would suspect our angel.
Biff, please.
Don't worry, Angel. Let me do talking. It was after 1 in the morning. I was on duty patrolling passageway. Then our angel came to me. She was white like sheet.
Biff, please, you must help me.
I went with her. The door to cabin number 1 was open. When I looked inside, I saw student boy on floor. What happened here?
Please, don't tell anyone. My little one. My little furry friend.
Everything that happened in cabin is like Angel told you. The kitten escaped through the ventilator into Mr. Asogi's cabin. Then he tripped over it and broke his neck when he fell to the floor. Yes, that is right. So after the incident, when the cat ran away, Miss Pavlova then visited the cabin next to hers, only to find its occupant lying lifeless on the floor. She said she was worried when she heard sound of something falling on floor. That's when she went to look. No, Angel? The door was not locked, so she opened to look, and you already know what happened after.
There's just one thing, if you wouldn't mind.
What?
When you went to Mr. Asogi's cabin, Miss Pavlova, was he already dead? Why?
I already told you. When Nina opened door of student's cabin and locked...
I was asking Miss Pavlova.
Well, Miss Pavlova?
Da. Yes, that is right. I saw him. It was dark and he was wearing black, but he was on the floor, not moving. I was scared. I understand, and I believe you.
So is that finally it now? Have we discovered the real truth about Kazuma's death at last? Something very nearly slipped my mind. Mr. Sholmes? This photograph. Yes, I took this myself, you know? The cause of death was a broken neck, therefore the victim died instantly. And the unfortunate incident that precipitated these events, a kitten on which the victim stumbled. However, if those are the facts, there is one particular area in this photograph that seems to me somewhat unnatural. What do you mean, unnatural? What are your thoughts on that matter, Mr. Naruhodo? Well... If Kazuma tripped and fell, and by some terrible stroke of bad luck broke his neck, which part of this photographic print seems unnatural? Die Faust, oder? Alright, if he really fell due to an unfortunate accident, then this fist just doesn't seem quite right. The exact same thought occurred to me. In a fall, one's instinct is to open the palms flat. Yet, here, we see the victim with his left hand tightly balled into a fist. Almost, you might say, as though he were gripping something. What do you mean? Simply that I took the liberty of investigating the victim's fist a short while ago. You did? And what, pray, do you imagine I found there, my dear fellow?
Mr. Sholmes, show us, please.
Why, of course, my dear madam, would I keep you in suspense. This is what I found.
Oh, a crescent moon with a little gemstone in the middle?
Yes, you're right. A crescent moon. It's very pretty, but what does it tell us? It tells us nothing. I'm not so sure. That crescent moon looks... It looks familiar somehow. I'm sure I've seen it somewhere before. Miss Pavlova trägt so einen Ohrring. Observation, Mr. Naruhodo. That is the key. What? The truth is now tenderly singly close. Gott, es sind so viele Wörter, die ich noch nie in meinem Leben ausgesprochen habe. How did that crescent moon come to be in Kazuma's clenched fist? This is the final clue, the last piece of the puzzle. Ask yourself, what does this little crescent moon mean? What significance has it? And observe, find the answer with your own eyes. Miss Pavlova, on your ear there. I see you have a crescent moon as well. And on your other ear, there seems to be a crescent moon missing. The little link holding it on must have broken, I suppose. Now the missing crescent moon was found and the victim's clenched fist. Clearly there is only one logical conclusion. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Naruhodo? Yes. Miss Pavlova, Mr. Asogi must have grasped that crescent moon and pulled it from your ear, perhaps just moments before he fell to the floor. In other words, last night in Mr. Asogi's cabin, you witnessed the moment when the victim fell with your own eyes. In fact, you were quite literally at arm's length from him. But then the question is, why did Mr. Asogi do that? Why did he pull your earring from your ear and hold it in his clenched fist during his final moments? Angel? No one can protect you now. Please, Miss Pavlova, tell us the truth. Last night, what did you do to Kazuma? When I think about everything that happened yesterday, it was too much. Running away, the fishing boat in the middle of the night, trying to climb onto this huge ship. And then, when I was at last in this cabin and I could relax after this horrible long day. I couldn't believe it when she disappeared through the ventilator. I tried to call her with a little whistle. I tried waving her favorite toy, but nothing worked. Darker would not come back. What are you doing here at this time of night, Inspector? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was a friend of mine. A young man from your country. He was very polite and kind. He helped me to find Darko and he promised not to tell anyone. But then, when I had my friend in my arms again and I was going to leave the man's cabin... Just a moment. Sorry, but... Oh, yes? I'm sure I know your face. I've seen you somewhere before. Ah, of course, you're Nikolina Pavlova, aren't you? The Russian ballerina. No, I don't know that name. My heart nearly stopped when he said that. He knew who I was. How could this man from a land in the far away east know a Russian ballerina? Yes, I saw your performance in Japan. The beauty of the ballet made a deep impression on me. But what are you doing on the ship? I'm sure I read that your ballet company was performing in Shanghai at the moment. I can't fool him. I have to tell him the truth and hope he doesn't tell anyone. I have no other choice. I see. So you've run away. Please, please keep my secret. Don't tell anyone. Give me a moment. I could use another opinion here. He's going to pull that cord. He's going to tell the captain. Why did I think I could trust him? And it happened. Everything at once. Das Traurige ist, er wollte nicht die Glocke läuten, er wollte uns aufwecken. Er wollte Ryunosuke aufwecken. Und um Rat fragen. Und sie hat das falsch interpretiert. Und deswegen ist er gestorben.
It was only a second, but it felt like forever. Wait, I shouted, and then Darka jumped out of my arms and down to the young man's feet. And as he turned around to look at me, I pushed him. I don't even know why. I don't know why I did it. I was just so scared. And I had to stop him from telling anyone about me.
And that's when you went to fetch help from Seaman Stroganov, who was on duty out in the passageway. I heard Nina cry out and thud on floor, so I ran to her. She was standing at cabin door, shaking like leaf. She looked at me and said,
"Help me, Biff. If they find out, I will be... Please, I have nowhere to go."
So you decided to help, and that's when you arranged things in Kazuma's cabin to make it look like I did it, so that no one would suspect the passenger in the cabin next door? Yes, I went into cabin and I looked around to make sure there was nothing to show Nina was there. And then I found Stowaway, in wardrobe, still sleeping. Right, that's when he found me.
So you worked out a plan to lay the blame on the Stowaway.
I closed wardrobe doors and put back strange paper sign.
Luckily for me, that's the only reason Suseto-san started to believe me when I said I was innocent.
I dragged the young man's body to good place and used ink that was spilling to write on floor. I wrote wardrobe so that person who found him would look inside wardrobe and find Stowaway. And tell me, what of the glass bell?
It was by my feet, so I picked it up.
I see.
But it was dark in the cabin. I didn't notice the other half.
Then Angel went back to her cabin and I finished job by pressing the emergency alarm button in the passageway. Accordingly, the SS Buria did indeed come to an emergency halt at a little after 2 AM. Those unteasing the bolt on the cabin door to slide shut, creating the locked room mystery. There's still one thing I don't understand, Miss Pavlova. Well, you said that you told Kazuma about the fact that you would run away from your homeland. And it's because you were worried he was going to tell the captain that you pushed him. Isn't that right?
Yes.
But even if he had pulled the bell cord and called for the captain of the ship, aren't you friends with every member of the crew? Why would that have been a problem? Übrigens, ich glaube, das eine Wort habe ich falsch gelesen. Ich glaube, es ging darum, dass sie es ihm ja erzählt hat. Und dass sie jetzt Angst hat, dass er es dem Captain erzählt.
It was what he said first that made me scared.
What he said first? What are you doing here at this time of night, Inspector? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was a friend of mine.
He said an inspector was his friend.
Ah, yes, meaning me, who was supposed to be acting as his bodyguard.
I thought that if police know about me, they would arrest me. So before he could pull the bell cord, May I stop you a moment, please, Miss Pavlova? It just doesn't seem to make sense. I mean, was Mr. Asogi really going to pull the bell cord? I don't know. What do you think, Mr. Naruhodo?
Well, I'm not Kazuma, so I can't know for certain, but he was a man of his word. If he told you he wouldn't give your secret away, then he wouldn't have done.
No, he was walking over to it. He was going to pull the cord. He was going to make them send me back.
Well, Mr. Naruhodo, the day's work is not yet done, it seems. There is one more deduction to make. What? Another deduction? Yes, what action was the victim really about to take at the moment? Can we determine whether the young man's gaze was directed? First, consider the victim's location with his cabin. That's easy, I remember every detail of that room. I mean, yes, I spent quite a lot of time in the wardrobe, but still. That cabin has been my home for this entire voyage.
So this is how the cabin looked last night when Miss Pavlova visited Kazuma-sama?
Yes, it's exactly how it was. Are you ready then, Mr. Naruhodo? Yes. If there's one thing I've learned today, it's that a simple gaze can reveal all manner of truths. And not only that, in order to draw the right conclusion, you can't afford to be out by even a little bit when you're following the gaze of to where it lands. So when he turned away from Miss Pavlova, what exactly was Kazuma looking at? Considering everything that had happened last night, certainly it may have looked as though Kazuma was going to ring the bell cord, yes, however... What is directly beside the bell cord? The wardrobe.
The wardrobe?
And more importantly, what was inside the wardrobe? The man's great friend, sleeping soundly.
Miss Pavlova, please, think back very carefully. What were Mr. Sogi's exact words last night?
Give me a moment, I could use another opinion here.
Another opinion?
Yes, but not from a member of the crew. No, Mr. Sogi intended to consult his close friend on the matter. To see if between them they might be able to help in some way, no doubt.
Sadly, we can't know the truth for certain now. It's too late for that. But I wish you had made sure of what Mr. Sogi was looking at. Things may have ended very differently if you had.
Miss Pavlova, I want to thank you for finally admitting the truth. But unfortunately, the truth is, a man lost his life because of what you did, and that will never change. I hope you will never forget that.
I am sorry. Really, I am so sorry. What have I done?
And so, at long last, the mystery surrounding the tragic accident on the SS Berea was finally laid to rest.